Hello, I'm Larry Johnson, and welcome to this special episode of Counter Currents. Instead of interviewing one of the more notable people I know, I want to talk today about what's really going on in Venezuela. Try to put this into perspective. All of this is taking place against the continuing drama, kabuki theater regarding a Donald Trump peace plan for Ukraine. And I may talk about that a little bit at the end. But that peace plan is dead on arrival. It's going nowhere. But with Venezuela, there's something else afoot. And to understand this, we need to go back into the 1980s. When I was at the Central Intelligence Agency in the 1980s, it was fairly commonly known. I worked on the Latin American side of the house. I worked both with the Directorate of Operations as well as with my final post was with the Directorate of Intelligence. And it was pretty widely known that Carlos Andres Perez, who was then president of Venezuela, was a CIA paid asset. And at the time, the U.S. primary interest in Venezuela, to be candid, was keep the oil companies happy and screw the people, making sure that the people of Venezuela had a good life and were prosperous and doing what? No. That wasn't a priority at all for the United States. So come 1991, thereabouts, we begin to get, there's this fellow named Hugo Chavez, who is in the military. And Mr. Chavez notes that the situation with economic turmoil, hyperinflation that exceeded 30%, a poverty rate of over 50%, and this all taking place with falling oil prices. It exposed, it was a complete failure of this this party that was called the Punto Fijo Pacto. But, they failed to deliver the goods to the people of Venezuela. And so Chavez attempted a coup. It failed. And sort of like, I don't mean to draw up a Hitler analogy, but in the same way that Adolf Hitler's beer hall putsch of Munich failed and he went to prison and he wrote Mein Kampf and became popular out of that, Chavez, too, was sent to prison for 2 years. And during that time, his popularity grew. And it grew to the point that he finally, when he got out of prison after 2 years, and he could no longer participate in the military, he was barred from that, he became a civilian politician, campaigned and won in 1999. So this 1999 victory, the victory actually took place December 6, 1998. But by 1999, he's fully installed. I'll just note parenthetically that another person who came to power in August of 1999 was a fellow by the name of Vladimir Putin. I'm not suggesting that Putin and Chavez were working together at the time. I'm just saying that they came into power at the same time. Now, Chavez was inaugurated on February 2nd, 1999, and he began trying to address the great economic pain the people of Venezuela were suffering from. And he was successful. And he started, by in 2001, 2 years after coming into office, he started making moves to take control of the PDVSA, Petróleos de Venezuela. And there were, U.S. oil companies that were profiting from that business. Well, Chavez mistakenly, from the U.S. standpoint, was taking that away from the capitalist world. And but he succeeded in wresting control from the Western Oil Company and devoting the profits that were coming out of that with to the Venezuelan people, and he was enjoying stratospheric popularity. So in 2000, and by the time of 2006, that Venezuela stopped cooperating with the United States on both anti-drug and counterterrorism policies. But again, more of this was a pushback against U.S. interference in Venezuela. The CIA had been a long time interfering in Venezuela. And, at that point, they designated 4 members of Chavez government as international terrorists and narcotics traffickers who were aiding the FARC guerrillas with weapons and drugs. Now, FARC, the Fuerzas Armadas Revolucionarias de Colombia, FARC, is a Colombian revolutionary group that had moved back and forth across the border into Venezuela and had received arms and support via Venezuela, but not officially from the government per se, but more through, let's call them enterprising entrepreneurs. By 2011, now with Barack Obama in office, there were further sanctions imposed on Chavez. And then in 2014, the U.S. government gets involved further with Congress passing the Venezuelan Defense of Human Rights and Civil Society Act. And this was authorizing sanctions on officials responsible for, quote, violence against protesters and human rights abuses. Now, you may find this surprising.
All right, folks, hold on just a second. We've got something important to share with you. First off, a big thank you for all your incredible support. Our team's been putting in the hours, really working hard to bring you insightful guests, new and improved formats, solid, high-quality analysis every week. Our next goal, hitting that 100,000 subscriber mark and getting that silver button. Let's make it happen together. Every like, comment, share, and subscription truly helps us grow and keep improving. All right then, let's get back to the video.
But the USAID and the CIA were involved with working with opposition groups, trying to promote protests, trying to undermine the government of Hugo Chavez. There was never a point in which the United States actually sought to have a mutually beneficial relationship with Chavez. It was one based upon confrontation. And this continued during the Obama administration. And then, by this time, by 2017, Maduro, Chavez has died, Maduro's in power. And Trump imposes additional sanctions on Maduro. And again, the United States claims that the election was stolen by Maduro. Maybe it was, but the United States is a rock thrower living in a glass house on that point. We've had multiple years of interference in foreign elections. Now, there's an interesting story that's being circulated by Emerald Robinson, and I like Emerald, and relying upon Gary Bernson. Gary's a former CIA officer. I know Gary. I've always considered him a friend. And Ralph Pizzullo. But, they're claiming that Venezuela was a part of some global plot to undermine the U.S. election, to electronic voting machines. Look, this is all nonsense. If anybody was involved with developing voting machines, electronic machines to manipulate elections, it was my old organization, the Central Intelligence Agency. It wasn't Venezuela. Venezuela actually was not out campaigning to interfere in the affairs of other countries. It was really fighting back against what was persistent interference from the United States. And this has continued up through this day. Now, the term we've heard a lot about, Tren de Aragua. Tren de Aragua is allegedly to be some massive, drug trafficking organization. But when you go back and search for, like, when did it first appear? Well, it pops up in 2018. Now, in 2018, a number of things happened in the United States. Publicly, Trump signed an executive order blocking Venezuela digital currency, and it banned debt purchases, and it targeted also the gold sector and corruption, supposedly. I also believe that there was a secret CIA finding signed in 2018, giving the CIA permission to overthrow and destroy the government of Maduro. That started in 2018, and one of those elements in that CIA plot was Tren de Aragua, the creation of Tren de Aragua. We see that news stories start popping up in places like Peru and Argentina about Tren de Aragua. Well, can I prove this? No, but I believe that those stories were planted by the Directorate of Operations, the Latin American Division of the Central Intelligence Agency. And this was part of a broader plot to create an information war against Maduro, as well as to try to recruit actors within Venezuela who would act on behalf of the United States against Maduro. And we had, the open recruitment of Juan Guaido, and declaring that he was the legitimate president of Venezuela, and bringing him to Washington for Trump's State of the Union address. You had the old Iran-Contra Cold Warrior, Elliot Abrams, leading the charge to try to take out Maduro. It all failed. So jump ahead now. We're back with Donald Trump in office. And he has not let go of this desire to oust Maduro. And it's all, look, this isn't anything to punish Venezuela for election interference. This is about oil, gas, gold, and other rare earth minerals. This is about bringing Venezuela once again under the control of the U.S. financial sector so that Venezuela would be compelled to share its wealth with the United States. Now, Trump has run into some problems. Yeah, the CIA is actively and has been actively working, trying to bribe military officers, as they successfully did back in 2003 prior to the invasion of Iraq, where senior Iraqi military officers were basically paid off not to perform. So far, it looks like the CIA has not had any success on that front, because the Venezuelan military understands exactly what's afoot, that this is one more effort being played out by the United States to try to control so they can rape and rob the people of Venezuela. This is not about promoting democracy. And I'm not here to suggest that, Hugo Chavez or Maduro, Vicente Maduro, were, great beacons of democracy and protectors of human rights. But there's also always a context that the U.S. efforts to portray it as a one-sided abuse by Venezuelans ignores the role that the United States played overtly and covertly in trying to undermine that government. The United States faces a real challenge now. It has deployed significant military forces off the coast of Venezuela. It has conducted, in my view, and in my opinion, an illegal attacks on boats that they claim are carrying drugs. I would simply ask you just to use your logic with respect to the very first boat that the United States destroyed more than a month and a half ago. It was a 60-foot boat with 4 outboard motors, described as a cigarette boat, but it wasn't like your conventional cigarette boat. It was actually open, not closed over. It had 11 people on board. Now, the range of that boat is supposedly smuggling drugs to the United States except this boat only has a capacity to go 250 miles before it would need to be refueled. And the distance from the North Shore of Venezuela to the United States is over 1,300 miles. There's no way the boat could get there. And if it was going to be refueled by carrying fuel on board, there wouldn't be any room for drugs, number one, because the number of jerry cans that would be required to be hauled would be significant. And, this is not a boat with the kind of creature comfort you'd need for a 1,300-mile journey. You do have to stop and go to the bathroom. You do want to get something to eat once in a while. So this is not a boat for that kind of operation. Is there a lot of smuggling activity that goes on down in that part of the world? Yes, absolutely. Cigarettes, liquor, other electronic items. There's a lot of smuggling. But given my experience working with U.S. military special operation forces, starting in actively scripting exercises in 1994, I saw hundreds, really more than 200 examples of rules of engagement for possible operations. I never saw a single authorization to attack a boat just because we believed there were bad people on it carrying drugs. The proper way to handle that is you stop the vessel. If in the course of stopping the vessel then opens fire and attacks U.S. forces, then you blow the boat away. But I base this on conversations with Coast Guard enlisted and officers. Most of the time when the Coast Guard would make these stops, they'd board the boats. And if they discovered contraband, illegal drugs, they'd seize the drugs and arrest the crew. And then they would be given a chance to cooperate or go to prison. That's the right way to do it. Just killing, extrajudicial killings without any kind of due process it may feel good, but it's wrong and it's evil. And Donald Trump, right now is trying to make an issue of, there have been 6 members of Congress, at least one of them is, a retired naval officer, and, they basically called upon U.S. military personnel. If you're given an order to go out and kill people on boats that have not threatened to kill you, they haven't said it this explicitly, but this is the essence of what they're saying. They're calling upon U.S. military to disobey those orders. That is an unlawful order. I would argue it is an unlawful order, and that those personnel should refuse to carry it out. But unfortunately, we've got too many sheep in the U.S. military who are willing to kill people that are likely just fishermen, who are not drug traffickers and who are not kingpins. But this killing for killing's sake is unfortunately part of the death cult that the United States has become, and it's wrong. The urgency about trying to carry out a military operation against Venezuela is running into problems. Number one, when you alert the size of military forces and try to keep them actively engaged, their readiness level declines over time. That's number one. As I've commented on other podcasts, I saw the U.S. went through a similar phenomenon trying to take out Manuel Noriega, where then more than a year before we launched the invasion of Panama in December of 1989. Even before we did that, there had been efforts by the CIA to both entice, suborn members of Noriega's government to turn against him, as well as to create incidents that would provoke a response from the Panamanians that then we could use to justify attacking. And I saw this firsthand. The Panama analyst sat right behind me in my cubicle at CIA. And she was very actively involved in getting briefed by the DO what they were doing, because this was an organized effort to overthrow a guy that we had recruited, that had been run by the CIA Manuel Noriega had been a CIA asset, so let's not pretend that he was just some authentically evil bad guy that just came out of nowhere. Well, we're trying to do the same thing in Venezuela, but with not much success. And I'm sure there are at least some smart people at the Pentagon, at Southern Command, that can look at a map and realize Venezuela is a country that's twice the size of Iraq. It is a country filled with mountains, tropical jungle, tropical rainforest, very difficult terrain to traverse, with rivers, wetlands, swamps. So if you go back and compare our operation in Iraq in 2003 with 130,000 troops, even though the United States took control of Baghdad fairly quickly within 5 to 6 weeks, it did not quell or control the population. Civil order broke down, and the Iraqis started an insurgency. In my judgment, if the United States were to try a similar operation in Venezuela, we would face a far more severe and lethal insurgency by different guerrilla elements in Venezuela, and those who would come from Colombia and from Brazil. The other thing to recognize, though, is unlike the 130,000 troops we had mobilized that entered Iraq in March 2003, right now we only have 18,000 troops, mostly Marines, parked off the coast of Venezuela. That force is not big enough or strong enough or capable enough to enter Venezuela and take control of key roads, key sites. In fact, it's worth noting that Venezuela militarily far more capable than the Houthis. They have if you will, a historical tradition that these guerrilla movements can melt into the jungles and then come out and attack and destroy U.S. targets and U.S. personnel. The fact of the matter that Venezuela is twice as large as Iraq, and that we actually don't have a force comparable to what we used in Iraq, tells me that this is just either it's silly saber rattling on Donald Trump's part, or if he is actually intent on inserting U.S. military forces, it will be the end of his presidency. It will turn into a military disaster, a debacle. And those officers in the chain of command who go along with this will be guilty of misconduct and of following an unlawful order. This attempt by the Trump administration to bully military officers who are, even those who are now retired, because they simply speak up and point out that in this particular case, what's being done off the coast of Venezuela is illegal. It's not authorized under U.S. law, but it's being done. And when it's being done in the name of the American people, it implicates as well the American people in what I consider to be a war crime. So I think right now the Trump administration, despite rattling the saber, despite threatening to attack Venezuela, recognizes that such an attack would put them in a position of being viewed as impotent, because it's not going to cause the collapse of Venezuelan society or the Maduro government. Even if they kill Maduro, there will be others to step up and take his place. The prospects for a civil war in Ukraine, in Venezuela at that point, would be very significant. So I think we're going to see Trump try to move for a more negotiated escape plan to try to cut a deal with Maduro. I don't know if that's possible, but the effort to get Maduro to flee and to give up power in Venezuela, I think is going to fall short. I hope you found this worth your time. At least give you something to think about, to put these activities in context. Please hit the like and subscribe button. It does help grow this channel. And I will, from time to time, try to come out with additional monologues or analysis of key events. Right now, if you're watching the circus that's surrounding the Trump peace plan with respect to Ukraine, I think that's also a dead end. I may come back on air later this week to talk about that. Meanwhile, I wish you well. I thank you for watching. Hit the like and subscribe button, please. And I thank you for your time. I'm Larry Johnson, and this is Countercurrents.